In this episode, I speak with Megan Wakefield, former attorney turned herbalist and gardener at Walking Wild Herbs in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. We have a conversation about using herbal teas and various herbs as both a comfort food, so to speak, as well as the medicinal and healthy lifestyle supporting benefits that they provide, the value of using local gardening and local farms for her high-grade quality organic materials that she uses to create her tea blends. She also offers gardening classes, and with the current state we're in with COVID circumstance, she has been offering these classes remotely. You can check out the link in the show notes. So listen, learn about herbal remedies as well as home gardening. Enjoy. All right, before we jump into the episode, just wanted to share some information about Anchor. It's a great free platform for starting out a podcast. It's what I've been using, and it was a great turnkey solution for me to be able to focus on the primary mission of my podcast and not worry as much about how to get the word out, where to post, things of that nature. Anchors takes care of that for you. They distribute, they set up a platform that is easy to use with lots of tutorials. They give recommendations and coaching on how to even interview on your podcast to get you started. So I would encourage you to look into it. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Now, on to the episode. Okay, my guest today on the episode is Megan Wakefield, founder, herbalist, and gardener at Walking Wild Herbs. Megan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So it's great to have you. You know, as we were talking offline, I've been digging into herbs a little bit lately. I've always been a bit of a tea drinker, grew up that way, and then adding different types of teas. I'm a bit of a drink geek, constantly trying different drinks. And so I'm anxious to get into not just kind of the flavors of it, but obviously the medicinal and healthy benefits of herbal drinks and teas. But before we kind of get into the company, why don't we give a little bit of background about you, kind of how you got there and your path to ownership of Walking Wild Herbs and how you started?
Sure. Yeah. My path is a little windy, but if you'll allow. Yeah. I as a child, my grandmother is a fantastic gardener, and she owned an herb shop and a mail delivery business for herbs when I was a child. And so my earliest childhood memories are, harvesting lavender with her and making, time and space for tea parties, for things we gather in the garden, and, seeing herbs drying from the rafters and that kind of thing. So my earliest kind of formative connection to plants was through my grandmother. I grew up, I went to law school, and while I was in law school, I started finding myself called back toward plants. I had been, just really on that academic path for a long time, really focused on that. And when I came out of law school and first started my first legal desk job, I found myself really needing that call back to the earth and being connected back toward plants. I started growing a garden. I started volunteering on the weekends at a farm. And I also enrolled myself in an herbalism course. And so, I was doing that kind of in conjunction with my legal career, and I still am to a certain extent. But what ended up happening is I had this amazing opportunity. My partner wanted to study to do his master's in Europe. And so I had this choice, and I ended up kind of taking leave from my legal work and throwing myself kind of all into working on farms and learning how to grow plants. And it kind of manifested in this really interesting project where I thought, well, I want to, be growing plants and talking with people about plants, be educating about all this knowledge that I've gained about growing plants, but then also using this herbal education to be able to talk with people about supporting their own health through both the use of medicinal herbs and the practice of gardening. And kind of in between those two, also in the practice of taking time and taking space to sit down and enjoy a cup of tea, to be able to like create ritual and ceremony in your daily life that allows for some space and some healing as well, just in the actual ritual of it. So Walking Wild kind of started as doing garden consultation and a little education. I ended up starting to sell a line of herbal teas that I have created. And it's manifested in all kinds of different ways. I've got all kinds of cool collaborations with lots of business owners in the area to focus on bringing healthy food and drink to people in the area and creating community around these ideas. So it's kind of a smattering of things, and it's a little all over the place, but it's really wonderful because it's been this really natural growth of just following the plants.
Yeah, that's a fun evolution of just kind of how, this longstanding family related connection has evolved into, passion and purpose that is, always been timely, but especially now it seems where and like you said, reconnecting, I think we've gotten so far away with the processed foods and easy access to grocery stores, which is great. It's not obviously not writing that, but understanding the origination of where foods come from, particularly plants and herbs and things of that nature.
Yeah. And having the opportunity to engage with them kind of wherever you are, right? Like if people don't have access to a great big garden and the time and space to be able to cultivate all their own food, and maybe they do get their food from the grocery store, at least, thinking, okay, can I maybe make some seasonal choices to connect myself with the changes of the season? Or can I grow a pot of herbs on my windowsill or on my patio and be able to engage with plants in that way? And, I've lived in lots of different places over the past 10 years, including, traveling in Europe and not having a steady place to root. And so throughout this whole process, even when I haven't had access to a garden, having this knowledge has given me the opportunity to kind of seek out that rooting and connection with plants, anywhere I am. So it's been, it's a nice, very flexible path.
Yeah. And, it could be, like you said, around, you kind of touched on it and we can dig deeper in a minute, but like the gardening piece, the kind of the therapeutic, digging in the dirt, just relax, but working and just something to kind of work through. I mean, I enjoy getting out in the yard and doing some things because you can kind of see the beginning, progress and end to it, but also just kind of getting outside and breathing the air a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So Walking Wild Herbs, let's dig into the company a little bit. You mentioned the different blends. You mentioned the long history of the kind of the healthy supporting lifestyle. Maybe we can expand a little bit on that.
Yeah. So, I'm trained as a Western herbalist, which just means that the cultural tradition that my herbalism training comes from is from Western Europe. There's obviously, as many cultural traditions of herbalism as there are people that have ever lived. But there's a very long history of herbal support. Pretty much since people have been around.
Sure.
And so, my version of herbalism has been through this Western herbalism lens, but then also I've really taken to heart this practice of creating a relationship with a whole plant. So in my blends with Walking Wild Herbs, focus less on, like what herb is good for this, or like what constituents are, have certain actions. I'm cognizant of those qualities, but I really try to create blends that are wholly supportive so that I want the herbs that I'm including in a blend to be balancing. So if something is really energizing, I'll balance it with something that's kind of focusing, kind of rooting, calming. I try to kind of offer small shifts with my tea, something that's supportive and helps people kind of return to their self-healing quality, rather than like, oh, I've got to take my tea because it's my, medicine that's going to lower my blood pressure or something like that.
Right.
Which isn't to say that that's not the case. There are lots of herbalists that use plants in that way, and that's really a wonderful practice. But the way that I've kind of incorporated herbalism into my tea blends is something that is really focused on flavor. I want it to taste delicious. And, not every herb that's good for you tastes delicious.
This is true.
So I try to make blends that are really, that you look forward to enjoying, that you would want to set aside some time to, stand quietly and boil your water, and then, infuse the herbs, and then sit and wait and smell. And, I really try to create blends that are this, that create an experience around them. But then also ones that, that are supportive, encouraging of self-healing, and can kind of be a nudge. So some of the blends, for example, we have one blend, a number of my blends are kind of, even though I'm using my own Western herbalist experience, a couple of the blends I've put together, I created through the Ayurvedic lens. So that's the Indian approach to herbalism. And, utilized kind of some of those herbs that we don't naturally grow here or in Western Europe, things like ginger and turmeric and black pepper and that kinds of things. But that blend, for example, is really energizing, but not so much so that it's got a bunch of caffeine in it or anything. It has no tea in it. It's just purely herbal energizing tea. And it works incredibly well for people who are looking for more movement or more energy in their day. For me, as a really fiery, energetic person, it's actually not my blend. I love how it tastes, but if I drink it, I kind of find myself, feeling
jittery.
a little jittery, a little overwhelmed. So for me, there are other blends in kind of the range of teas that I create that are more appropriate for me. And it's really fun. I sell my teas both online and at a farmer's market. And it's really fun for me at the farmer's market. I have little smelling jars of each blends, and people have these really funny reactions when they even smell the blend. They know right away whether it's right for them or wrong for them.
Yeah.
And it often is, somebody will say, well, I actually don't like rosemary, but this blend smells really good to me. And it's, usually that's an indication that, okay, your body's asking for that blend. It's called to it. It's something that is worth exploring. Even if traditionally I'm not a person who loves rosemary, or I'm not a person who likes chamomile or whatever it is. So it's been really fun to kind of engage with people directly around these blends too, and kind of see how they interact with different people.
Yeah. And you bring up an interesting point of, using other sensories to kind of drive the consideration, right? Like aromatherapy almost of the blends and coming together with those scents and various things, whether it's music or flowers, they bring back memories and just a particular state that you may want to be in. And it sounds kind of, that's where you're going is I'll call it that state management, maybe more often deregulating yourself to kind of calm and enjoy the moment. Or
I had a consultation with a lady this week who contacted me and said, I'm feeling called to lavender. I think I want to grow it in my garden, but I don't know how to use it. How would you use lavender? And it was such a beautiful recognition of being called to something. If you smell a scent and it's reminiscent of something in your childhood, or you taste an herb and think, I don't know why, but I really want some more of this. There probably is a chemical reason why that has to do with something in the plant, but more present in your life, you can say, okay, I'm going to follow that. I'm going to lean into it. And okay, maybe, lavender has a lot of wonderful qualities, but one of them is that it's a really beautiful nervine. It's really soothing to the nervous system. It can be something you can incorporate in teas, but you can also incorporate it in a bath, or just bringing it in your home and drying it, hanging it, and if you're feeling I think I might want to incorporate lavender in my garden, it's very, very worthwhile to just then try it, spend the time to tend the plant in the garden, but also bring it indoors, taste it, smell it, engage with it in these different ways, and kind of for yourself discover, how does it support me best?
Right. So that's interesting. So you do consultations when it comes to that, like kind of personalizing your tea consumption?
If people want that, for sure. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, this in particular was a garden consultation. So it's
Okay.
talking about gardening, but yes, I do offer garden consultation, but as well, if somebody wants to just talk herbs, I'm always on board for that. I'm not a clinical herbalist in the sense that I wouldn't say like meet with somebody and help them treat an illness.
Sure.
But absolutely, if people have questions about what herbs they're feeling called to, or how to use a certain plant, or how to grow a certain plant, that's certainly something that I love talking about.
Yeah, and you probably, based on your experience, you can provide directional guidance around, I'm struggling to sleep, or I'm feeling under the weather. Maybe take this blend or this type of tea.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I always do that, even with friends and family. The suggestions that I make are invitations to explore, so I'll say, I've read or I've experienced in my own experience that this plant might be helpful for you. Why don't you, take some time to explore it? And, and often kind of the old herbalist trick is you only experiment with one plant at a time so that you know how it impacts your body. So
Sure.
like, if somebody comes to me and says, yeah, I'm having trouble with sleep, I've often said, for me, a blend that really works well for encouraging sleep for me are the 3: lemon balm, chamomile, and lavender. And they make a really beautiful tea together. They're really like a wonderfully supportive nervine tonic. I really enjoy them. And I might say to somebody, you could try that blend. Or if one in particular is really attracting you, if you're really interested in chamomile, maybe just start with that plant and see how it feels on your body, and then maybe introduce another plant, maybe introduce lemon balm or introduce lavender, just to see, just as a approaching it with a sense of curiosity and participation with your body in the pursuit of health or in the pursuit of balance.
Yeah, I think that's a great practice. That is kind of the framework for life, is just trying things, not too many things at one time, to really understand how you respond, whether it's food or, like you were saying, with the different herbs and teas, to see how your body responds to it. Because we all respond differently. I say this, and I've probably said it before in another episode, but, we're all walking chemistry sets, and there's a lot of generalizations on things, but each one of us may respond differently to whatever that is.
Right.
So when it comes to the process of, the company and doing the teas, how do you go from a gardening? Are you organic? How do you focus on that aspect of it to produce the quality that you produce?
Yeah. So my home gardening practices are, completely, organic and kind of, and I focus on regenerative. So I try to focus on improving the soil. We just moved here to a new home this year, or within the past year. And so, everything, we're starting from scratch here with the soil, which is really fun. Stripping sod and starting to put in plants and build up soil. So my focus is very much on regenerative growth. But that said, I grow some of the herbs that I use in my teas, but I don't have enough. I sell more tea than I grow. So I do buy in a lot of my herbs. So when I'm looking for things to buy, I'm looking for organic. That's a non-negotiable on the herbs that I buy. I also look for high quality. So I'll taste herbs before I buy them in bulk. I want to know that herbs were dried properly and that they are fresh. So when you're looking at herbs and trying to determine if they're fresh, you really want the plant to look and smell and taste pretty much the same as it did when it was fresh, when it was before it's been dried. So I look for, if something is green, for example, I want it to have a really bright, vibrant green color in the dried herb. And when I taste it, it should infuse the water and create an aroma when the boiling water touches the plant. And so I'm just really engaging with the plant really deeply when I'm trying it out to see, is this a really high quality plant? Was it dried properly? Was it packaged and stored properly? So I try my best to find the very highest quality herbs that I can use in my teas. I want them to be as fresh as possible. I've been also focusing on trying to find local sources for my herbs. And so that's a practice, finding each and every little herb is grown by a different farmer. So I'm trying to find, different local farmers to try to bring those sources more close to home. And that's something too that's really useful in health, and in choosing herbs that are really full of those really wonderful constituents that are going to provide a lot of support for us. Like something that is fresh is going to have more of the chemical compounds in it that create those medicinal benefits. The closer to when it was in the ground, the better. So I'm looking for fresh herbs, but also those local herbs have the opportunity to, first of all, come to me more quickly and be put into feast more quickly. But also they have been grown here. So grown in our own soil with our own pollinators, with our own water. And a super local herb actually can be more supportive, more healthful for the person, for the body, just because of our environments. So like nettles is a plant that I consume every day. Stinging nettles is just a common weed. But it's really got wonderful qualities, all kinds of wonderful qualities. It's got a lot of vitamins and minerals in it. It's got iron and calcium. It's like a really healthful herb, but also it has an antihistamine quality. So it's really wonderful for times like right now, when there's a lot of allergens in the air. It can be really supportive for allergies. But most specifically, even if you're able to get locally grown nettles, can be just really wonderful. And mixed in a tea with some local honey is a really great, very hyper localized way to address something that is a seasonal shift. It invites us to look up and look outside and say, "Hey, it's spring," and then also call on those herbal supports that provide some help.
Awesome. That's interesting. I'm going to have to check that out. This is for me, high time for allergies.
Yes.
With hay fever, and spring is sprung, and probably because our winter wasn't much of one.
Right.
Things are going to be blooming and, exponentially this season.
Yes, that's the case. Yeah. And a lot of things are blooming at the same time, because we had such a warm winter and then such a quick warm up last month. Yes, there's a lot of pollen in the air for sure.
Yeah. So when it comes to, the gardening classes you said you offer. So how long have you been offering those, and what kind of classes? What could someone expect?
Yeah, that's actually a super new one for me. I had before just been doing one-on-one garden consultations. I'd go to people's homes and talk to them about their garden and help, create a design for them. This garden class idea was just this spring. Somebody approached me and said, we're interested in doing some classes. Would you be interested in teaching a garden class? And it was going to be for those who are local, at For Goodness Sake in Leesburg. That is a small, wonderful wellness-focused grocery store. And so we were going to be doing that there in person. And when this coronavirus hit, we decided to shift it virtually. So I served it for the first time just over the past month. It was 4 weeks of 1 hour a week, and focused on specifically for beginner gardeners and for small spaces. So people gardening on patios, on balconies, or in a small backyard. And it went really wonderfully. It was such a delight. It was absolutely the highlight of my week to be able to join these beginner gardeners. And they were so engaged in asking wonderful questions that I'm offering it again. So it's starting again next Thursday, and it's going to be another 4-week beginner small space garden series. And I try to cover kind of everything you'd need to know to get started. So we focus on soil, we focus on choosing the right kinds of containers or building containers, and then what kind of soil are you going to use? How do you select plants or seeds? How do you start seeds? Or if you're going to buy plant starts, getting them in the ground, how do you make sure that they're healthy? We talk about fertilizing and pest and disease control. And then we focus a lot toward the end on amplifying your harvest. So if you really were going to try to grow enough food and herbs for your family in your small space, which is absolutely doable, how do you plan to do that? And how do you maximize harvest? So we try to pack a whole bunch into just 4 weeks of 1 hour sessions. But it's a really nice overview. People get a chance to ask a lot of questions. And what was cool to watch in this last time we offered the class was how many people started their garden within those 4 weeks, started the garden, started seeing things pop up above the soil. And, it was really wonderful. It's kind of a quick get started, crash course.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I know my daughters have been asking to start something. So, so you're saying you don't, when you start it, you don't necessarily have to have the garden just yet, but
yeah, the very first week is, pick your pot, pick your area of your garden where you're gonna plant, and taking the time to observe the garden is an incredibly important step that kind of can't be skipped. Even here, like we're in a new home, we were able to spend the first 6 or 7 months in this home just watching the garden and seeing, where does rain collect and how does the sun move? And in the spring versus the summer versus the winter, where's there shade? And it's very worthwhile to take the time to observe your garden space and choose a location and a size of garden that's manageable. One of the things I always kind of talk about is a garden, the most important ingredient for a garden, more important than water or sunlight or nutrients or anything, is access to you, the gardener. So picking a garden space that is one that you can easily access, that you want to go out and spend time in every day, because that's going to be the most valuable asset for a successful garden is going to be you. So, you absolutely don't need to have already laid out your plot and amended your soil and ready to put things in the ground to join the course. It's definitely like you can be just in dream phase and start from there.
Great. And it sounds like, like a lot of things, awareness and observation you're saying is just to understand the context of what's going to work best to get the most out of the garden.
Yeah. A lot of what I teach in gardening, but also a lot of the intention behind Walking Wild in its entirety is about taking time and moving slowly and being in silence. That's a lot of what's really beautiful about gardening. It's a lot of the lessons that gardening and tea consumption and herbal medicine, all of those have a lot to teach us. But one of the things is teaching us how to stand still and observe. And that's, it's a really beautiful practice for gardening, but it's a great practice for life to know how to stand still.
Yeah. That patient persistence and just the value of slowing down a little bit. That's kind of one of the key principles of even initiating the podcast was I noticed for myself, you're close to the DC metro area. We're in a hyper accelerated environment, go. And sometimes you just got to slow down and literally smell the roses or the lavender or whatever is growing in your garden at the time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Megan, I've really enjoyed the conversation, really digging into this herbal conversation. Any other things that I didn't touch on yet that might be of value to help folks understand, the benefits of herbs and as part of their kind of healthy lifestyle?
Yeah. I would just say, the most important thing is just trying something. If you have this spark of curiosity toward gardening or a spark of curiosity toward tea or toward herbal medicine, just try something. I'm actually I came at this from the very beginning. Like I said, I was in law school when I first kind of refound plants. And my approach was okay, I'm going to learn absolutely everything there is to learn before I even taste a tea or before I even grow a plant. And, I would discourage that. I would say, if you have the curiosity, if you have the interest, go ahead and, get a plant to put on your windowsill, or go ahead and buy some dried herbs that smell good to you and start tasting them in teas and start experimenting with them in your cooking. Just give something a try. And then, have enough grace with yourself and enough space and curiosity that if it doesn't work, if a plant dies, it doesn't mean you're a bad plant parent or you've got a black thumb. It just, it's a learning experience. It's something to learn from and could encourage more exploration. That's one thing that, I think is just really important in these spaces of taking control of your own wellness or taking control of your access to the outdoors or of your health, is think, okay, what can I try right now today? And, this is a practice in my own garden while we've been at home during this coronavirus experience. It's been so important. And so it's a lesson I keep relearning, is I am somebody who I've done this a lot on a professional scale of gardening and farming. And I'm used to doing things kind of the right way. And right now I don't have access to everything that I need. I don't have all the resources I normally would have. I'm not running up to, the local plant nursery to get what I need. And so I'm being creative with what I have at home and building my gardens and preparing my soil with what I've got. And it's such a great lesson to learn. It's such a great lesson to learn what exactly. It's such a great lesson to learn what you can do with what you have.
That's awesome. So before we close out, ask 3 kind of personal questions. What are you reading right now?
Oh, wow. That's so cool. I actually have it right here. So I'm rereading actually. And this is a book that I don't even remember reading it through the first time, but I'm sure it's a great resource. But I just started rereading it last night. It's this book called The Traditional Practice of Western Herbalism. It's by Matthew Wood. He's a really well-known and well-respected Western herbalist. But it's just been really interesting because I often, read these resources and then place them on a shelf, and I learn something and then it falls out of my head. And so I've been kind of revisiting a lot of these books, while I'm at home. And so, I just restarted that one yesterday. It's been a real joy.
Awesome. So what are you listening to, music or podcast?
Ooh. So podcast, I always am listening to Cultivating Space. It's an amazing podcast about gardening and about, all things plants. It's a really wonderful one. That one I listen to a lot. With music, I've been really called to these, I've been listening to the Cat Stevens radio on Spotify. I'm very much I'm just back in the that space right now.
70s folk.
70s folk, Yeah. I mean, that's always kind of my jam, but right now I'm really in it. Yeah, that's where I'm at with music.
Awesome. All right, last one, but what is your rest and recovery method?
Yeah, that one is it's constant through my day. So, my natural waking up state is one of go. So I have every morning this reminder where I jump out of bed and I start brewing coffee. And then I think, okay, now it's time to rest for a minute. Check in, take some space, take some deep breaths. I do a little grounding practice. And then I do, and a lot of people do ask me, as a tea person, do I still drink coffee? And the answer is yes. I do still drink coffee in the morning. And then I drink my tea throughout the day as a support. So that's one of my practices, is just grounding in the morning. Then I go out in my garden and I check on everything. I see if anything needs water, if anything needs weeding. And then I usually harvest, right now I'm drinking a tea of just a couple leaves from a bunch of different plants that I collected as I was walking through my garden this morning. And then I do take some time in the afternoon as well to do the same, to go back outside, walk through my garden, make any, adjustments or work on any projects that the garden needs, and 8 hours of sleep.
8 hours of sleep. Very important. Very important.
Yes.
Well, Megan, again, thank you so much. Where can people find you on the internet and learn more about the classes you offer?
Sure. Yeah. The primary place you'll find me is on Instagram at Walking Wild Herbs. And I also have a website. It's walkingwild.org.
Great. Megan, again, thank you for the time. This has been really educational for me, and, give me some new blends to try. As I said earlier, I'm a bit of a beverage geek and constantly trying different teas. And, you mentioned some of the Indian blends, traditional Indian blends with turmeric and ashwagandha and some of the others. But yeah, so thank you so much for the time. Grateful for it. And have a great day.
Thank you so much, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Lots of great practical tips covered here today. And if you know someone who could get some value out of this episode, please share. Be super grateful. We're all about being well and improving our life. And so if someone can get value out of this, please remember to subscribe, review, and share. Again, grateful for you. Remember, be rested, be well.